Om Prithvi Shantirantariksha Shantir Dyaus Shantir Disha Shantiravantara Disha Shantiragni Shantir Vayu Shantiraditya Shantish Chandrama Shantir Nakshatrani Shantirapa Shantiroshadaya Shantir Vanaspataya Shantir Gau Shantiraja Shantirashva Shantir Purusha Shantir Brahma Shantir Brahmana Shantir Shantireva Shanti Shantir Me Astu Shantihi. May there be peace on earth and in the sky. May there be peace in the water and in all directions. May there be peace in the plants, in the trees, and in animals. May there be peace in the hearts of all beings. May there be peace in everyone and in everything. Sarvetra sukhinas santu, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschit dukha bhag bhavet, sarvastaratu durgani, sarvo bhadrani pashyatu, sarvas sadbuddhimapnotu, sarvas sarvatra nandatu. May all be happy and healthy. May all see what is good, and may no one experience misery. May all overcome their obstacles and acquire good tendencies. May people everywhere find joy and fulfillment. Let us now spend some time touching the center of peace and joy in our hearts. A good way to begin the practice is to withdraw the scattered energies of the mind and bring them to rest on one point. That point can be our own breathing. Let us therefore practice breathing with awareness. As we breathe in, let us visualize that our body and mind are being filled with love, strength, and compassion. And as we breathe out, let us release all the stress, anxiety, and exhaustion in the body and mind. Let us practice this way for a while. Let us now turn our attention to the region of our heart. Although God is present everywhere and in everyone, the divine presence can be felt most clearly in our own hearts. We can meditate in any way we have been taught. To remain focused, we can take the help of a short mental prayer or a mantra or a divine name. Let us now spend some time dwelling on the presence of God in our hearts. Asato ma satkamaya, tamaso ma jyotirgamaya, mrityorma amritam gamaya, avirāvirmayedhi, rudrayatte dakshinam mukham, tena mam pahi nityam. May the Divine lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May the Divine Consciousness fill our hearts and protect us. We'll continue with our study of verse number 53. Let us recite it together. Ahankaram balam darpam kamam krodham parigraham vimuccha nirmama shanto brahma bhuyaya kalpate. Forsaking egotism, power, arrogance, desire, anger, and superfluous things, free from the notion of mine and tranquil, he is fit for becoming Brahman. It's a very important verse, partly because it seems to summarize most of the important practices that Krishna prescribes in the Gita. So in the last couple of classes, we have already discussed what does forsaking egotism means, power, arrogance, desire. Last class we saw the mechanism of how desires spring in the heart and how desires themselves are not so much a problem because there is nothing we can do about it, because desires spring from the mental impression which are already present. Secondly, not all desires are bad, or not all desires are self-destructive. So desires are good or bad depending on what effect they produce if we act upon them. So those desires, so acting upon a desire really means my willpower grabbing the desire and transforming the desire into an intention which then leads to action. And then actions produce results, happiness or sorrow, but also more mental impressions. And in general terms, either things that we do in life, thoughts that we think in life, either go to make us stronger or more mature, more wise, or these thoughts go to make us weaker and make us more immature. So where our freedom lies now is not so much in eliminating desires or controlling desires as it is sometimes called. Where our freedom lies in choosing which desires to act upon and which desires to ignore. Because the desire is simply a wish that comes in the mind. I would like to do this, I would like to do that. So long as you don't grab that wish and decide to do something about it, it's not so much a problem. It'll come if you decide, no, I'm going to ignore it. It just comes and remains for a little while in your conscious part of your mind and then disappears. It doesn't disappear out in the atmosphere. It disappears, goes back into your unconscious. So it hasn't gone away from you, but it is at least not an immediate problem because it's unconscious, you are not even aware of it. And I also said that the more you say no to any desire that comes in the heart, the weaker it gets. The more you say yes the stronger it gets. And also you are multiplying it, because it's like an example I gave you last time. Like if there is a desire for coffee. Now the desire for coffee has sprung in my heart because there is already a coffee samskara in my heart. Now if I act upon that desire, one effect will be, if I enjoy coffee, it's going to make me happy. But the second effect will be, first of all, I have made that first coffee samskara stronger. And by my second cup of coffee that I have drunk, I have created one more coffee samskara. So if I had only one mental impression before, now I have two. And if I have two, the probability of that desire arising has already become double. So that's essentially what happens. Now, what happens when there is an obstruction to desire? That is, a desire comes, you make your own determination, say, okay, I'm going to act upon it. But some hurdle comes in the way. For instance, well, let's stick to that coffee desire. So now, coffee desire springs in your heart, and you decide, well, it's not weakening me, it makes me happy. And usually what we want to do, if you want to do something, we'll always look at the positive that it will give us. So again, that's how the kind of tricks that mind plays. Anyway, so you feel like drinking coffee, so you think of all the wonderful things that coffee can do to you. And then you say, okay, then your will grabs that desire. It becomes an intention. I intend to drink a cup of coffee. Intention will get transformed into action, karma. So you walk to your nearest Starbucks or Dunkin' Donuts. Now then suddenly you find it's closed that day. Now so there is an obstruction to your fulfillment of the desire to drink coffee. That's the only coffee shop next to you, very close to you, and it's closed. So one outcome would be of that obstacle is you feel sad, produces dukkham, produces misery. I wanted to drink, but it's closed. What am I going to do? But there can be another kind of effect as well. Let's say it's open. It's open, and maybe the person who is serving coffee is so mad at you for whatever reason. That person says, I have coffee, but I'm not going to give it to you. Then, and if you are stronger than that person, you are going to get mad. That's when anger comes. So, if there is an obstacle to desire, if that obstacle is something beyond your control or something you cannot do anything about it, then you're going to be miserable. If you can do something about it, or if that obstacle is kind of a little bit weaker than you, then it transforms into anger. And then you start yelling and shouting, why can't you give me coffee? So now that's what is here, anger. So you can see again, all of these are related. Any obstacle to the fulfillment of desire, if the obstacle is weaker than me, it's going to produce anger. And as I pointed out on earlier occasions, if we are a little bit alert, we know the moment, or at the kind of a pre-anger stage, if you like. So let's say you are somewhere and someone is really irritating you, or really making you very upset. So that's kind of a pre-anger stage. You haven't become angry yet, but you kind of know, I'm really getting upset. This is making me mad. So long as you are aware that something is irritating you, that irritation, that upset, that sense of feeling upset is still the object of your perception. You are still observing it. As long as you are observing it, there is a hope that you can control it. There is a hope that it will not overwhelm you. But you will notice that sometimes, even when you're kind of aware, like, I'm getting irritated, I'm getting upset, at some point, suddenly, from being aware that we are getting upset or angry, we become angry. In fact, we become anger. As long as I'm observing my irritation or observing my anger, my irritation and anger is still an object of my perception. There is still some distance between it and me because I'm observing it, I'm aware of it. But then I'm no longer aware of it, I become it. So sometimes people say, I'm angry. Reality, they have become anger. And then when I'm no longer observing it, I've kind of become it, then I have no control over what I say or what I do. And that's why sometimes when people get mad or upset, as long as in that pre-upset, pre-anger stage, there is some hope. Once that stage is crossed, then you have no control. Then you might say something, you might do something, and then later on, when that kind of wave of anger passes away, and then you suddenly come to your senses, and then you realize, oh, I shouldn't have said that. What was I thinking? What was I doing? And then, of course, if you feel too guilty about it, then you might probably go and apologize to the person and say, I'm really sorry. And then people have excuses like, oh, I was in a very bad mood and blah, blah, blah. So there is this regret or guilt that is felt. Later, when we realize we said something or did something which we should not have said or should not have done. But at that moment, I don't know it because I'm no longer observing it. And that's why this value of being always alert. As long as I'm aware of it, I'm able to protect myself from it. And therefore, if you are prone to getting angry, because some people say, well, I'm very short-tempered, I have anger management problems. One of the things that can help is when you are in that pre-anger stage or that pre-irritation stage, when you're kind of aware that you're getting irritated or angry, a quick fix solution to that problem is to try to create more distance between the object, between the cause of your anger or cause of your irritation. So if there's some person who is making you mad, it might be good to kind of just leave the room and do it gently. Don't make it too dramatic because then that will create another kind of problem. But if you can, it's like this. If you go to a different room, when you're no longer physically or even visually in contact with the object of your irritation, the chances that you might get overwhelmed by your anger are less. And maybe if possible, go out for a walk. Or go pick and do something which will divert your mind from that. Now, this is not a permanent solution because that seed of anger, that samskara of anger, has not disappeared. You have kind of averted a catastrophe, but that samskara of anger has kind of gone back into your subconscious mind. The good thing that has happened is, because you didn't act upon it, because it had to kind of go back into the unconscious, it has become a little bit weaker. So, for those who have anger problems, a first thing really which is helpful is to kind of physically distance yourself. And then, over time then, we might be able to then deal with the subtler aspects of anger. But this is always very helpful. One other thing that can be helpful is, especially with people, if there is some people irritating you or making you mad, and you feel like you're about to start yelling at them, force yourself to smile. It may be very difficult to smile at that moment, but consider it as some kind of an exercise. Not all exercises are easy. Kind of force the muscles of this area to kind of just stretch and smile. The reason I say this is, it's very difficult to get mad and angry and say something nasty if you are in a smiling. If you are smiling, it won't happen. Now this might seem to be kind of, but it works. It's a simple thing, but it works. But you must remember to smile. And people who have managed to kind of get their anger, their irritation under control, are able to retain their own peace of mind, balance longer and better. And that is absolutely necessary for our spiritual practice. Because otherwise, you have been yelling and shouting and getting mad throughout the day with people around you. When you try to meditate or when you try to pray, those samskaras are so active, that's what's going to come in your mind during meditation. And no wonder then we say, oh, meditation is so tough. So we need to find a way to kind of restore that peace and harmony within us. And these are some of the ways of dealing with anger. And so, anger, Krishna says here, giving up, first minimizing and conquering that anger within us is an important practice for realizing God. And forsaking superfluous things. The word here is parigraha. In Patanjali's Yoga Sutras, there is a word called aparigraham. Sometimes the word aparigraha is translated as non-stealing. Now, in a very gross sense, of course, people who go and steal things. But here, non-stealing is much more subtle. And in its extreme form, it really means appropriating anything in life more than what we absolutely need. That's why it is said that there are so many people, for instance, about food, so many people the world over who are dying for lack of adequate food. And then in the developed, the prosperous parts of the world, there is an excess of food. And so here, forsaking superfluous things means that yes, of course, we need enough to keep our body and mind healthy. But whatever is an excess, more than needed to keep myself healthy, I'm really taking it out of the mouth of some hungry person in some part of the world. And so to the extent we become conscious of using the resources that we have responsibly, we are practicing what Krishna wants us to do. So superfluous things here really mean what I don't absolutely need. And now the definition of what I need and what I don't need, that will vary from person to person. That's your own judgment. You have to decide for yourself. There is no one kind of a universal rule. I cannot set down a rule like these are the things you need and these are the things you don't need. No one should do that for us. We have to just look in our heart and say, through God's grace, so many resources have become available to us, available to me. And whatever resources are available to me, I'll try to make the best use of them. I will use them responsibly. And one of the responsible ways of using the resources is trying to avoid the wastage. And so that's what is meant here by forsaking superfluous things. That's why Krishna mentions in the Gita that there is a phrase Krishna uses, yadricha labhaha. So in the advanced stages of spiritual life, a person learns to depend so much on God and says, I'm going to carry out all the duties and responsibilities in my life as best I can. And then, whatever comes through the will of God, santushtaha, I'm going to be content with it. So this is not to say that we are not going to work hard. Every one of us should work hard. We all have our duties and responsibilities. We must carry them out as best we can. And as a result of our hard work, as a result of our carrying out our duties and responsibilities, things will come. All that we have to say is, I will be content with the things that come to me, and I will make the best use of them. And as I have pointed out on several occasions, the law of life is this, that if something I deserve, if there is something I deserve to get, there is no power in the world which can stop me from getting it. There is nothing. Nobody can stop me from getting what I am due. And if there is something that's not in India, they have a way of expressing it. They'll oftentimes point out that if it's not written here, the belief is that Brahma or Prajapati, I sometimes call, has already written on our forehead. Now, not literally, but it's kind of a figurative way of saying it, that whatever I'm going to get in life is already been kind of decided by the infinite being. That's a way sometimes in many Indian languages they express it. But the basic idea is this, that whatever I'm going to get in life, no one can stop me from getting it. Whatever I'm not going to get in life, I'm not going to get it even if I move heaven and hell or earth, whatever I do. Now this can be misunderstood, this idea. It's like then, well, shouldn't I try to do anything? No, as I said, we have to work hard. We have to do the best we can. We need to strive for excellence. All that is fine. But after having tried our best, we need to recognize that what will happen will happen. What will not happen will not happen. There's a verse that comes in Panchadashi, the other great book that we studied some years ago, which says simply this: the wise people know that what will happen will happen. What will not happen will not happen. Knowing this, we become free from the poison of anxiety and free from all delusion. Just think about it. How tension-free, how stress-free our life will be if we all are mindful of our duties and responsibilities in life. We all try to hold on to the path of honesty, truthfulness, unselfishness. We try to carry out our duties as best we can, and then recognize what will happen, what will not happen, will not happen. The problem comes only when there is something within us which makes us feel, I can change an outcome. And that's really at the crux of why the feelings of guilt, regret, and so on come. So this is something that needs to be reflected over. So forsaking egotism, power, arrogance, desire, anger, and superfluous things, free from the notion of mine, nirmamaha. Now, again, a lot of these things that are being said here are kind of a summary of what we have seen before. I've said ego manifests in two ways in our lives. One is in a sense of I. In Sanskrit, it's called aham. And the other is mine, mama. So aham and mama. Everything in life that I refer to as I, that is my primary ego. And everything that I refer to as mine, that is a secondary ego. And again, the boundary is not very rigid, because we ourselves are not clear about who am I and what is mine. So sometimes I can say, oh, I am not well. And then I can also say, oh, my head is aching. So is the head me or is the head mine? So it's a kind of a very porous boundary. We kind of move between the looking upon the body and me as me, and sometimes the body and me as mine. There is not so much of a confusion about things which we see outside of us. So very rarely, I think no normal person would think of his or her car as this is me. Well, no, car is mine. Your computer is mine. Your home is yours. But you don't say, it's me. But sometimes in some extraordinary situations, that which is mine might seem to be me. And it will be like, let's say, in fire, someone's home is consumed in fire, completely reduced to ashes. And that shock, at that moment, it's possible for that person to say, I'm destroyed. Now, really, it's like my house is destroyed. So that which was mine in that moment of profound grief and sadness can become me. So the thing to remember is that this ego takes the form as I or mine. Now, if we have to choose between the two, I and mine, and sometimes we are called upon to make such a choice, then it is easier to let go of mine than me. And therefore, the first step in dealing with one's ego is trying to transform everything in life, everything that we are connected to, as mine. And of course, there are already mine, so many things that we have in life, but also the body. Look upon this as not me, but as mine. So it's my body, it's my mind. Even when you're celebrating your birthday, no need to go on telling your friends. It will going to sound very odd. It's my body's birthday. It's really, it's going to be. It's not going to sound right. You don't have to say that. It's not how you phrase it. But deep down, you should know that even when you celebrate your birthday, essentially you are marking one more year that this body has been on the planet. So it's not so much how you express yourself to others, but it's what you see within your heart. So let your normal usage be fine. You can say, I am sitting, I am talking. That's perfectly fine. That would be a normal way to speak. But deep down, you should know that the body and the mind are as much your instruments as your pen. Well, very few people use their pen nowadays, your computer or your car. So look upon the body and the mind as instruments. Because the more we look upon the body and mind as instruments, at some time or the other, this thought is going to come. Well, if they are instruments, someone is using that instruments. And the one who is using the instrument, that's me. That's who I really am. So is this Atman whose instrument the body and mind are. And so the more we look upon the body and mind as instruments, that's an indirect way of knowing that I am different from my body and mind and I am the Atman. So that is why, free from the notion of mine. So first, transform all I's into mine, and then, since the mind is only an object of your experience, it's easy then to be free from that notion, and then remaining tranquil. If I'm able to deal to however little a measure, it may not happen overnight, forsaking egotism, power, arrogance, desire, anger, superfluous, it's pretty formidable list. But to whatever extent, however feeble my efforts may be, to whatever extent I succeed, to that extent, I will already begin to experience some tranquility in my heart. Shantaha. So, during meditation, we try to find a quiet spot so that the external noise is removed. But yet, we may not have a good meditation because there are all this internal noise going on within us. So, Shantaha, tranquility, is not simply finding a quiet spot, going to the top of a mountain or inside a deep cave while I might succeed a little bit in lessening the external sound, uh, that is no guarantee that my inner sounds will end. And so tranquility here really means trying to stop the inner sounds. And inner sounds will be all of these unresolved conflicts in our heart, our hopes, our aspirations, our fears. All of these suddenly start chattering, making sound when you try to meditate. Sometimes people find that when they are busy doing work, they are more calm than when they are trying to meditate. Because when you are busy doing things, your mind is already gotten engaged with, has some toys to play with, whatever work you are busy with. But when you're trying to meditate, you've already made an effort to shut yourself off from all the things outside. Now, when you have consciously tried to keep the things outside away from you during the time of your meditation, the only thing that the mind has is the stuff that is going on inside. And there is a lot of chaos going on inside. That's what the mind is going to grab. And that's why sometimes people find that they are more calm when they are not meditating and doing other things than when they are meditating. It's kind of paradoxical. And therefore, sometimes people are not so enthusiastic. Well, they are enthusiastic in the beginning for meditation, but over time, if we don't have that strong willpower and there's a genuine desire or aspiration to experience the spiritual ideal, to experience God, one might then be tempted to look upon one's practice as some kind of a chore. It's like, oh my God, I have to kind of get through this. But a brave person, a courageous person is one who says, yes, it's a challenge, it's difficult, but I'm going to go on, do it day after day after day. And to one who perseveres, one who is sincere, one who works hard at it, gradually your mind becomes tranquil. And that's when Krishna says he is fit for becoming Brahman. So this one verse gives us in a nutshell the things that we need to focus on in our spiritual life. We need to look at the sense of I, the egoism within us, the power which is combined with the passion and desire, the energy that we have, and how we use that energy in our heart, arrogance, desire, anger, and superfluous things that need to become free from the notion of mine, and we need to be tranquil inside and outside. The outside tranquility may not always be within our control, but the inner tranquility is completely within our control. Only then does a person become fit for becoming Brahman. Verse number 54. Brahma bhuta prasannatma na shochati na kankshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate param. Becoming Brahman and tranquil-minded, he neither grieves nor desires. Alike to all beings, he attains supreme devotion to me. Now, becoming Brahman, if you want to be more technically correct, it really means, although that's probably not a very correct usage, it's unbecoming human. So, we are not becoming Brahman kind of gives the idea that we are becoming someone other than who we are. And the problem right now is we have already become other than who we are. So we are Brahman. We seem to think we are someone else. So we are divine beings. At present, we somehow begin to see ourselves as human beings. So we are not really becoming divine beings. We stop being human beings. Now, stop being human being kind of sounds odd or even terrible. So what does being a human being mean? And where does our humanity lie? It's in the experience of mortality. There is the fear of death. There is the awareness that my life is sandwiched between birth and death. There is the limitation. All of our life is lived within the limitation of the body and mind. If I'm in a human body, I cannot fly. If I'm in a bird's body, I cannot drive a car. Well, the idea is whatever a particular body can do, we are limited by the capacity of that body. We are limited by the capacity of the mind. So, a life lived within limitations, a life that is mortal, a life that is free from total fulfillment, that's where we are. And becoming Brahman means all of these limitations go away, all of these difficulties go away, and then we become what we already are. In other words, we stop thinking of ourselves or misidentifying ourselves and see ourselves for who we truly are. That's what becoming Brahman means. Brahma Bhuta Prasanna Atma, tranquil minded. We have already seen what tranquility means, a complete inner peace and outer peace. And that's possible only when we don't grieve when something valuable is lost, and nor do we desire for things which we look upon as valuable. Because there is then, at that stage, we realize that there is nothing outside of me. Nothing of value can be taken away from me, and nothing of value I can aspire after, because all of the value is really who I am. So I need not aspire after anything, and nothing can make me forget my true self. So free from grief and desire. And when that happens, I'm automatically alike to all beings. And that's why the God that Vedanta envisions doesn't have any favorites. Because if God has favorites, then well, there's not much difference from that God and us. Well, God has people who God likes, and there are people that God doesn't like. Again, when we think of although the Bible says that God created us in His image, when we think of God, we are really creating God in our image. And because we have favorites, we think that God has favorites too. So God is just the way God is alike to all beings, just the way the sun shines equally on all people without making any distinction. When that stage is reached, the person attained to supreme devotion, become that oneness with that ultimate being. Supreme devotion means the word bhakti is defined in different ways. One of the things I'm considering is, after we finish the Gita, to do some bhakti text, because there is a lot to reflect on. Shankaracharya, when he speaks about bhakti, he defines bhakti as swaswarupa anusandhanam bhaktiriti abhidhiyate. In that book Viveka Chudamani, Shankaracharya says that a single-minded examination into one's own true nature, and that is bhakti. So when we have a spiritual ideal and we are able to focus completely on that ideal, then that is what devotion means. And that is what Krishna says, that when a person becomes tranquil-minded, with no grief, no desire, look upon every experience in life with the same sightedness, in a tranquil way, such a person then acquires that single-minded devotion, that single-minded focus on the spiritual ideal. So we'll stop here now. If you have any thoughts, ideas, comments, questions, you're welcome.
Swamiji, you said about that samskara, like coffee samskara, you give the example. So, but you said that we are nothing but Brahman. So that samskara, spirituality, is already there. Am I correct in that sense? If we are Brahman, then we are a spiritual to begin with.
Yes.
But we are carrying, we have so many layers.
Right.
So how, when we have the first impression of a coffee, and then if I see coffee, it comes up. So why not, if spirituality is already within us, why doesn't give the strong, like we have addicted with something else?
No, the reason is that the samskara that are present in the mind, and the mind itself is a product of ignorance. So there is no such thing as Brahman samskara at that stage, because the mind comes into being as a result of ignorance. And so in the beginning they won't be. But now, later on, the more I read texts like the Gita and the Upanishad, and the more I consciously then say, I am Brahman, I am Atman. So the more I can think that way, I am actually creating then those samskaras. So we need to produce more of those samskaras. In fact, the practice of japa itself can be seen. Depending on how we see the repetition of the mantra that we have, every repetition is producing a samskara. And so the more the japa that you do, the more the samskara, more the impressions related to your ishta, to your chosen deity, are created. And that's why the greater the number of japas you do, the easier it gets. So we have to consciously then create those impressions. But they are not there from the beginning, because the mind itself was not there. The mind came as a result of ignorance. Yeah. Kashti?
So, Swamiji, I have one confusion. So, let's say I'm irritated at somebody and I'm angry. Sometimes it feels like, at the heat of the moment, it feels like if I vent a little bit, then I won't later on harbor any ill feelings in my heart. So there's no repression in that case. But if I, let's say, control myself and get rid of the anger for the time being, later on those feelings linger on in the mind for a longer time. So any comments about that?
Well, I think this way, that if we don't allow that seeds of anger to manifest, they will get weaker. And whatever it is that I was hoping to achieve through getting angry, I will find other ways of achieving that without getting angry. I mean, it's like this. If I'm angry at someone, I'm expecting some kind of a good outcome as a result of getting angry, right? Otherwise, it's a completely useless activity. Then there is no point in getting angry. But if I now stop myself from getting angry, and then my mind becomes tranquil again, I will find other ways of achieving the same result without getting angry. Does that make sense?
Then it seems that after we control our anger, then we need to make sure that we work on analyzing and reflecting on how to find the other way. Otherwise, it's going to be repression. Is that right?
Sure, yeah. But what happens is, every time you are able to control the anger, two things have happened. First of all, that anger impression that you have has become weaker because you didn't act upon it. And because you didn't get angry, you have stopped yourself from creating one more anger impression. So your anger samskaras have become weaker and have not increased in number. And that's why there are chances of, progressively you keep on practicing this, you will tend to get less angry over time. But the more I allow my anger to express itself, I'm creating more impressions, And then the greater the possibility of me getting anger. So people who are short-tempered have produced so many anger samskaras that they are like crazy. They are coming up every now and then. That's the way of saying it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Girija?
Swamiji, I have a question again about japa. Everyone says it's important to do japa not mechanically, and that you need to focus the mind intensely on the ishta. I understand that. But what about when you wake up in the morning and the japa, the mantra's already going, and you get out of bed and that first movement triggers the japa and all of those other things, that it's like on autopilot.
Mm-hmm.
Is that of any value?
Of course, and that's very good actually. That's how ideally it should be. And that's why when they speak about people who are japa siddha, people who have become adept in the practice of japa, and that is, it then keeps on going continuously even when one is engaged in other activities. It's sometimes like in many of these computers now, if you are downloading some app and the download is going to take several hours, let's say, it's kind of a big download. That doesn't mean that you can't do other work. You can still, your computer, you can still doing some other work, and the download can occur in the background. Similarly, ideally, at present, we have time for japa and time for work. But when japa can become so much a part of our being, then the japa will continue, even when we are busy with other things. That's what Swami Brahmananda meant when he said that it's possible to do, and this is only metaphorically, so don't take it literally. What he said was, hold a spiritual ideal with both of your hands. And then when it's time to do some work or carry out your duties and responsibilities, keep that one hand attached to the Lord and do the work with the other hand. When the work is over, again hold with both hands. Again, not literally, but the idea is if the part of our mind is somehow connected with the spiritual ideal, directly or indirectly, the quality of our meditation will improve. Because what happens is, because we have like a time to meditate and then the time to work, and then we sit for meditation again, it takes some time. That's why I need this kind of a preparatory thing in the beginning to kind of allow this whole noise of the day out and then again get back into meditation. But if a part of me is kind of already at some level connected with that ideal, then when I sit for meditation in the evening or the next morning, it becomes relatively easy. The morning meditation, for some people who tend to sleep well, the morning meditations are a little bit easier because if you have slept well, the mind has already been rested a little bit. Evening meditations can sometimes be a challenge depending on how your day has been. But even during all the crazy things happening throughout the day, if a part of my mind can somehow remain connected, then the evening meditation may not be so difficult. Mine?
Swamiji, one of the things about anger, when you read our scriptures with Vishwamitra or Parshuram, and you hear about the things which they sort of did with penance, but they also were very angry. How does that differ from a normal human being, sort of?
Well, there's always degrees of how much control you have acquired over your anger. And so just because someone is Vishwamitra doesn't necessarily mean that the person is already enlightened. And many of the rishis' stories, at least as we read in mythology, they were fairly advanced seekers, but many of them were not enlightened in that sense. Many of them had weaknesses. I mean, Vishwamitra, clearly, we know there are stories in his life when he forgot his ideal. So, but that still doesn't mean that, well, then I'm Vishwamitra. You can't, because he's still an advanced soul. We may not be as advanced as he is. Yeah, that's it. Now, there is an anger as a strategy, and by strategy, I mean sometimes anger may, this is not to say that one should never get angry. Sometimes the anger may be necessary, but then you are consciously using anger as a tool to get something done. Now, if you do it consciously, you are not being overpowered by it, you are not consumed by it, because you initiate it. It's not like, oh, I'm getting angry, but I'm not able to control. Then it's not a conscious thing. But in this particular, some instance you find, say, sometimes disciplining a little child or a student, sometimes kind, loving words may not work. Sometimes parents may have to get angry. Now, am I getting angry with my child just to vent my frustration, or I want my child to do something which I know is good for my child, but in this some instance I might find no, nothing else will work other than anger. So it's my love for my child that would make me use anger as a way of getting him or her to do something which is good for them. Now, if I use that anger in that way, how will I know that, how does this anger differ from that anger? And simple thing, I will not feel guilty. I will know exactly what I'm saying, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm not going to feel guilty about it. But when I'm consumed by anger, when I'm just venting my frustration, then I have no control. Then I'm just saying whatever I say, and I'm just thinking without any control over it. And then there'll be a chance to regret. Yeah.
Swamiji, all our qualities, good or bad, like all the desires, egotism, or the anger, everything is they're all sitting in our mind, right? So, do they somehow affect the Atman, or Atman get affected by any of these good or bad qualities?
Yeah, the thing is, Atman is already kind of affected, which is why they are there. If the Atman is not, the Atman is not really affected. Atman really is nothing. Atman is always Atman. But what does ignorance mean? Ignorance means that Atman seems to have been affected. I mean, who is Atman? You are the Atman, right? And so, if you are affected by anger and hatred and all of that, the Atman is kind of affected, but not really.
Yeah, then how can we differentiate between mind and Atman separately?
Well, that's the whole practice. Right now, when you say I, you're thinking about your body and mind. Becoming enlightened means when you say I, you think of the Atman. That's the only thing. The sense of I may be there, but where is that I identifying itself? Now when I say I'm sitting here, I'm really referring to the body. But if someone were to say, when is your birthday? And then, without thinking of some quotation from the Gita, the Upanishad, naturally and spontaneously, if you feel, I'm birthless and deathless, then you are enlightened. But if you give some date as your birth date, means you are not enlightened yet. That's simple. So if any time you were not sure whether you are enlightened or not, ask yourself when your birthday is. Yes.
Swamiji, it seems like there's a very narrow window, and it may be variable from one person to another, between which you realize that you're getting angry and you become the anger, and that may apply for other emotions as well. So my question is, how do you increase that window so that you don't reach that threshold and you're constantly aware, I'm not supposed to do this, not supposed to do this, and does meditation help with that?
Yes. Again, meditation shouldn't be considered like kind of a catch-all solution for all problems. I think what does help, first thing that would help is slowing down. Increasingly, now I really don't know whether people have become more impulsive and this thing in this time, and whether the earlier generations were any less. I doubt it. But slowing down does help. So if we can consciously decide not to react very quickly to anything in life, you will already find that window will increase. Take your time to decide how to respond to a situation. Even on, the thing is this, don't practice it only in challenging situations because that's going to be difficult. Begin practicing it in non-challenging situations. So when it becomes just a habit that I don't react immediately, just pause a little bit and say, okay, this is it. And in the beginning it might seem a bit odd, but the more one slows down a little bit, you'll find that window will increase. And it's very important to do that. And even when you want to do something good, still pause. Because again, it's just a habit. We might say, well, if I have to do something good, why can I not immediately do something good? Only something bad, let me pause. It doesn't work that way. The mind is same. The mind is a creature of habit. So the more I do decide to slow down and say, okay, let me be fully aware of what's happening within me and around me. Clearly, there will be things to do, thoughts to think, words to speak throughout the day. Let me be very conscious of what I'm thinking, what I'm saying, what I'm doing. In the beginning, it might seem as if you are slowing down and then how best to put it? Sometimes when we think there is a lot of work that needs to be done, we try to rush, and we actually make more mistakes. So if we just slow down a little bit in our thinking, in our speaking, in our doing things, and they have practiced, they have actually done research on this and found out we actually accomplish a lot more if we kind of take our time and do things in a systematic way. So the quality of our work improves, and the idea that we can do more things if we do it fast is not always true. Sometimes it may be true, but not always true. Because when we do too many things and do it very quickly, chances of making mistakes are increase, and some things we just don't do it well. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah. Okay, so we will stop here today, and then when we meet next time, we will begin with verse number 55. Om Jananim Saratam Devim Ramakrishnam Jagadgurum Padapadme Tayo Shritva Pranamami Muhur Muhu. Next Sunday, our subject will be for satsang, meditation versus reflection. Next Wednesday, we'll continue with the study of the Gita, and on Tuesday and Saturday, our meditation and Arati will continue as usual. Some of you may have heard about this. We have one young man named Sri Ram or Ram who used to attend some of the Gita classes. He has been missing since last week, since the 11th, and I'm in touch with his parents, and they are obviously very concerned, as we all are. So if you have any information, if you know him, and if you have any information, feel free to get in touch with me, let me know, and let's hope that He usually used to sit in the last row there. So he has been missing since the 11th of this month. That is almost about a week ago. And so let's hope and pray for him that he's safe wherever he is and that he will return home soon. So let's do the prayer now on page 3. May the Divine Being, who is the Father in heaven of the Christians, Holy One of the Jewish faith, Allah of the Muslims, Buddha of the Buddhists, Tao of the Taoists, Ahura Mazda of the Zoroastrians, the Great Spirit of the Native Americans, and Brahman of the Hindus, lead us from the unreal to the real, from darkness to light, from death to immortality. May we be granted strength, freedom, and clear understanding. May we learn to see God in our own hearts and in everyone around us. May God bless us all and fill our hearts with gratitude, grace, and love. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Peace, peace, peace be unto all.